He walked in with a paper bag. Inside, a submachine gun. Old, but deadly. The instructions were simple. Scare them. Hurt them if needed. Just don't mess it up. But when he pulled the trigger, nothing. Then it fired, uncontrollably. Bullets ripped through glass and stock. Customers dove for cover. And behind the counter, 27-year-old Nasar Hussain, a quiet shop worker with no gang ties, was hit in the chest. He died within minutes. The target, still breathing. The gunman, already running. This wasn't precision. This wasn't professional. It was chaos, and it wasn't the first time he'd botched a job. 3 hits, 1 missed completely. 1 man shot in the backside, and 1 innocent man killed for nothing. This is the story of Britain's most useless hitman, Simeon Henderson, and how he opened the door to the collapse of the entire network. Simeon Henderson wasn't a gangster, not in the way most understood it. He wasn't feared, respected, or even taken seriously. But he wanted in. He'd grown up in Huddersfield, bouncing between temporary jobs and petty thefts. Post office robberies, bookmaker stick-ups, always for quick cash, always caught. His criminal record was a mess of short-term gains and longer stretches inside. At one point, he stole £40,000 of drug money he was supposed to deliver. The man he was meant to meet got arrested. Henderson saw an opening. He kept the money, claiming the police had taken it. They hadn't. And when the dealer got released, Henderson paid the price. He was found, beaten, and told to return every penny, plus £10,000 more for his lies. The alternative was simple: be buried alive. He scraped together what he could. A few more robberies, another prison sentence. But when he got out, the debt had disappeared. Turf wars had erupted while he was inside. Dealers vanished. The heat was off. It should have been the end, a chance to disappear. Instead, Henderson made new contacts in prison, men with reach in Oldham and Bolton. Tensions were rising between rival crews. A message had to be sent, and someone had to pull the trigger. Henderson broke and overlooked, saw an opportunity. He wasn't trusted, he wasn't experienced, but that made him useful. He had no links to any one gang, no heat on his name, and more importantly, he was cheap. He offered his services for as little as £3,000. No questions asked, no loyalties. Just give him a name, an address, and the promise of cash. He didn't care who. He didn't ask why. He was broke and ready to shoot. But no one expected how badly it would go. The target wasn't a gang boss, just a guarantor, a man who'd backed a £30,000 loan and failed to recover it. But in the streets around Oldham and Bolton, that kind of debt couldn't go unpaid. The order came from Hafiz Mohammed, a car hire business owner on the surface, but known in the criminal circuit as someone who got things done. Alongside him, Gulfan Khan and Mohammed Safdar, both heavily embedded in the Oldham crew. They didn't want noise, just a message, something quiet but clear. Debts get settled, one way or another. They offered Henderson £7,000 to carry out the hit, but he wasn't prepared to kill. He hesitated, said he'd shoot the man in the legs instead, send a message, not take a life. The gang agreed, but made it clear, this wasn't a favor, it was a test. In November 2008, Henderson walked into the rival car hire office in Oldham. He'd been given a photo of the man. The plan was simple: get in, fire through the serving hatch, and leave. He did exactly that. He approached the serving hatch, aimed and emptied the weapon. The receptionist hit the ground. The man behind him dropped from his chair. But not a single bullet found flesh, not even close. Henderson fled, thinking the job was done, due to the reaction and screams. But days later, a brief line appeared in the local press. Shots fired, no one hurt, no arrests made. The gang weren't impressed. Henderson was called back in, not for praise, but to answer for failure. He insisted he'd landed a hit, said the man had screamed and fallen, that the muzzle flashes had blinded him. But it didn't matter. He got £1,000, a third of what was promised. No confirmation, no death, and no full payment. This was his test, and it ended in failure. The next call wouldn't be about warnings, it would be about revenge. By early 2009, Henderson hadn't earned trust, just another chance. This time, the job wasn't about money. It was personal. A younger gang member from Bolton had been calling out Hafiz, mocking him, calling him outdated. That kind of insult didn't go unanswered. Hafiz wanted him smoked. Clean and final, no warnings, no hesitation. On the 19th of March, Henderson was handed a pistol and a battered Ford Fiesta. He was told where to wait, just outside the man's house. The instructions were simple. Wait for him to come home, then strike. Hours passed. Then the red BMW M3 pulled into the driveway. Henderson stepped out. As the target opened his door, Henderson closed the distance from behind and fired 3 times. One round shattered the rear windscreen. The second struck flesh, not fatally, but enough to drop him. The third missed completely, embedding in the wall. Henderson turned and ran. The getaway was clean. He reported back to Hafiz, said it was done. But by morning, word had spread. Taxi drivers, street talk. The lad got shot in the arse, still alive. Henderson was summoned again. Hafiz was livid. 2 attempts, 2 failures. Target still breathing. But Henderson deflected, said he thought the man had gone down properly, that he'd screamed, hit the ground, that it was hard to know in the chaos. It wasn't a convincing defense. But Hafiz didn't walk away. He saw value in Henderson's distance. No direct ties to their crew, no police heat. One last chance was offered. No pay, no room for error. This time, it had to be different. This time, someone had to die. It was no longer about proving himself. This was an obligation, a job he owed. Henderson had been overpaid on the first hit, failed twice, and now Hafiz wanted his money's worth. The plan came from Mohammed Safdar. The feud between Bolton and Oldham crews was escalating. Brookhouse Wines in Eccles was the next target, a corner shop linked to their rivals. Henderson was told to go in and fire shots. Not a robbery, not a message, just raw intimidation. If a younger man was working the counter, shoot him in the leg. If it was an older one, spray the walls. He was given a submachine gun, an aging Czech-made SA-23. It looked crude, but it was dangerous. 600 rounds a minute. The job was set for the 4th of July 2009. Henderson was driven to the shop in a stolen blue Mazda by Ryan Manning. The weapon was wrapped in a bag. He walked in. He pulled the trigger. Nothing. Then it kicked. The gun erupted in a stream of automatic fire. Bottles shattered. Shelves collapsed. Customers hit the floor. Nassar Hussain, 27 years old, working the till, took 5 bullets to the chest and stomach. He wasn't involved in any feud. He wasn't the target. He was just doing his shift. Asif Khan, the man Henderson was supposed to scare, ducked behind the counter, unharmed. Henderson bolted to the getaway car and told Manning, "I think I've killed someone." He had, but not the man they sent him for. Let's go back to the first attempt. The first shot that ever drew police attention to Simeon Henderson came in November 2008 at a car hire office in Oldham. When officers arrived, they found no shell casings, no solid forensics. The CCTV footage was limited, and no one inside could identify the shooter. The motive wasn't clear either. No money taken, no threat issued. Just gunfire, then silence. The case was listed as a firearms discharge. No suspects, no arrests. Then came the second attempt. 19 March 2009. A man was shot in the driveway of his home. The victim refused to cooperate. He knew who was behind it, but saying so could cost him more than a scar. Again, no fingerprints, no arrests. But this time, police logged the incident as likely gang-related. Police found no shell casings after either of the first two shootings. The spent rounds vanished before forensics could secure the scene. Investigators believed it wasn't just bad luck. It's likely those involved cleared the mess or the victims themselves, then kept quiet. In both cases, the intended targets refused to cooperate. No names given, no details shared. They knew who sent the gunman and chose not to bring the police into it. But everything changed on the 4th of July 2009. Brookhouse Wines in Eccles was sprayed with automatic fire. This time, someone died. Nassar Hussain, an innocent shop worker, was shot 5 times as he stood behind the till. He never stood a chance. The getaway vehicle, a stolen blue Mazda, was dumped and torched in Wigan, but it wasn't fully destroyed. Police traced it back to Ryan Manning, a young man already flagged in earlier gun intelligence cases. He was arrested within days. The weapon, an SA-23 submachine gun, was found the next day by a member of the public. It had been wrapped in tracksuit bottoms and left under a parked car in Oldham. Forensics recovered partial prints. 2 clear ones matched Manning. The fabric was traced back to Henderson, seen wearing similar clothing on the night of the killing via CCTV. Ballistics matched the rounds found at Brookhouse Wines. Phone data placed both Henderson and Manning near the shop in the hours before the shooting. Multiple calls had been exchanged between them and known gang figures, including Mohammed Hafiz and Arfan Rafiq. CCTV from the shop showed Henderson walk in with the bag, raise the gun, and unleash the burst of fire. There was no robbery, no demand, just a targeted eruption of violence. Now, the 3 events, once separate, were being threaded together by Greater Manchester Police's major incident team. 3 shootings, all botched, all pointing to one man. Simeon Henderson was arrested within the week. He gave a partial confession, admitted to being involved but claimed he was set up, that the gang had tricked him, that the weapon malfunctioned. Detectives didn't buy it. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Henderson made a final move. He'd pulled the trigger. That part wasn't in question, but Henderson wasn't prepared to take the full weight of the murder alone. He told detectives, not just about the shop shooting, but everything that led up to it. He gave them names: Mohammed Hafiz, the organizer; Arfan Rafiq, who sourced the weapon; Ryan Manning, who was already in custody. He laid out the structure of the gang's operation, how contracts were passed, where weapons changed hands, how jobs were handed off to people like him. It wasn't a deal made lightly. Under the Serious Organised Crime and Police Act 2005, Henderson became an official cooperating witness, what the criminal world calls a supergrass. The arrests followed fast. Hafiz Mohammed was pulled in days later. Police had already connected him to previous shootings, but Henderson's account made the link concrete. He'd organised every step: the targets, the weapons, and who would carry them out. Arfan Rafiq, named as the man who supplied the SA-23 submachine gun, was arrested in Oldham. Partial prints on the gun matched, and Henderson's testimony put the weapon in his hands days before the shooting. Akmal Afzal, another gang associate, had helped facilitate Henderson's movements and was caught with a second illegal firearm. He was picked up at his Bolton home. Others named by Henderson, including Gulfan Gogo Khan, Mohammed Safdar, and Tanveer Akbar, fled before they could be brought in. Police believe they escaped to Pakistan. Arrest warrants were issued, but as of today, they remain wanted by British authorities, believed to be hiding somewhere in Pakistan. By the time the trial began, the gang's structure had been mapped in full, and Henderson had put himself in the middle of it. The trial at Manchester Crown Court ran for 8 weeks under tight security. The charge sheet was long: murder, manslaughter, firearms offences, assisting an offender. Simeon Henderson had already pleaded guilty. The evidence against him was overwhelming, but his cooperation with the police changed the outcome. He gave full evidence in court, under heavy protection. For 2 months, he walked the jury through the timeline, from the first botched attempt in Oldham to the final burst of automatic fire in Brookhouse Wines. He admitted everything, but said the gang had used him, that they'd chosen him because he was desperate, disposable, and disconnected. His cooperation changed the trial. It opened the door for police to prosecute far more than a single shooting. It exposed a wider pattern of violence between Bolton and Oldham gangs. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 15 years. That was nearly half of what he would have faced, reduced from a likely 32 years in recognition of the risks he took by turning informant. Mohammed Hafiz, 43, who ordered all 3 hits, received life with a minimum of 26 years. Arfan Rafiq, 26, was also sentenced to life, serving at least 18 years. Ryan Manning, 22, the getaway driver, was convicted of manslaughter and given an indeterminate sentence with a minimum of 8 years before parole could be considered. Akmal Afzal, 25, was jailed for 7 years for assisting an offender. Henderson later tried to appeal his conviction. Judges refused. He pled guilty, they said, and pulled the trigger. No legal argument could change that. In the end, the message was clear. 1 man fired the gun, but 5 men went to prison for the murder. If you've followed this far, we want to hear your thoughts. What do you make of Simeon Henderson, the sentencing, and the men are still on the run? Drop your comments below. And if you want more true UK crime stories told like this, subscribe, hit the bell, and stay with us. There's always another case to uncover.